Hey guys, kinggath here with another patch for Sim Settlements 2. This is patch 3.0.2, which I'm calling The Great Recovery. And that is because we have some tools in place to recover some of your saves. Turns out, some of the bugs a lot of you guys are experiencing are because there's a deep engine flaw that we recently discovered, and we had up to this point just assumed it was some sort of save corruption, but we're no longer convinced of that. So we'll get into more details and cover more of the patch notes shortly. First, I gotta thank the patrons because they are ensuring that us devs are not digging under our pockets to cover the costs of creating the mod and of maintaining all of our community tools and websites and things. So huge shout out to Stephen Kendig. Oh, this is going to be a rough one. I want to say Prometheus, but it doesn't look quite spelled like that. So we'll go with Prometheus. Then followed up by another one I'm not sure how to pronounce. Chelly or Kelly. It's like Kelly with a C. Oof, this is going to be a rough week. Victor Dithmar, Gordon, Broken Angel Wings, Terry Haskew, Aurora, and Jameson Peterman. Thank you guys all. And if I didn't shout you out today and you did sign up recently, don't worry, I will get to you in a video very, very soon. All right, let's talk about the issue that we discovered. So we've been dealing with this issue for quite some time, and we've often determined that it to be some sort of save game corruption. And the way you know you have this issue is certain systems in Sim Settlements will just appear to not work at all. One of the ones that we were able to replicate was where you're in HQ, and the supply agreements never seem to give you access to any of the resources that you know you have surplus in the settlements that it's connected to with the supply agreements. It's also manifested in having none of the warriors count for some of the new mechanics. And there are a bunch of other things that can manifest with this particular bug. And basically what happens, we found at the engine level, is we have these things called data stores, which Sim Settlements 2 basically creates these little objects, these little invisible objects, and it stores a lot of information about your game on it. So it can store things about what settlements you control, about things that you've set at the settlements, for example, who the leader is, or what the default flag is. All these different bits of information that Sim Settlements needs to record about things you do get put on these things called data stores. Well, it turns out that these data stores can just get replaced with other objects, and so the data store will suddenly be half invalid. Fortunately, we also determined that all of the data SS2 stores on it is kept in place. So what we're able to do now, as your game loads, and this will happen from this patch onward, is it will look at all your data stores, and if it determines that they were replaced by a different object, it will grab all of our data off of there, the data that SS2 has recorded, and move it to a fresh copy of the correct object, which will fix a lot of these random issues. So if this happens to you, if your save was a victim of this and you're on PC, you'll get a little pop-up telling you that it was recovered. On Xbox, it will just silently happen in the background, and you will find that certain things that weren't working before will suddenly start working after this patch. And like I said, this is going to auto-run automatically whenever you start your game from now on. So if this continues to happen in the future, where some sort of weird engine quirk decides to gobble up your data stores, we will recover them. So very excited to see if this just greatly reduces bug reports across the board. Speaking of bug reports, a bug that we introduced in 3.0.1 has now been fixed, and that's with the Envoy system. For those of you who have made it through to the Under One Banner quest in SS2 in Chapter 3, you are probably familiar with visitors who come to HQ to talk to you about your relationship with them. And in 3.01, we had started to prepare some code so that other mods could inject their own envoys in, and unfortunately it wasn't quite completed and ran into some problems. So now, if you had the issue where no envoys seemed to be appearing, or maybe you got one or two and then no more that you expected to show up showed up, we found out the issue is actually that the NLTC and the CPD were being queued up for everyone immediately. And so if you haven't completed those quest lines yet, those are just stuck in your queue. For new saves, this won't happen anymore, but if you already had a save that during patch 3.0.1, you reached Under One Banner, you're going to need to go do the NLTC and CPD quest lines to get those unstuck. I'm trying to dream up a way to recover this without breaking future functionality for players, but for now I wasn't able to think of anything before the patch day, so I just left that as is. So if you're finding that your envoys are all stuck and you're not getting all the allies you expected, go finish the NLTC and CPD quest lines. My apologies if you intended on skipping those on your save. Like I said, I'm still dreaming up a way to kind of recover from that, and if I'm able to, it will show up in patch 3.03, which will be a few weeks from now. All right, the next thing to show you guys are some new holotape tools, and they're kind of related to the data store recovery. So in investigating all of these data store issues, we found that there are some other things that might happen during your game that could create a situation where things aren't working exactly as you expect them to do. So what we like to do often in the City Manager holotape is put some advanced tools we can use for troubleshooting. So these are tools that I anticipate most of you will never need, most of you will never look at or remember what they're supposed to do, but they're kind of there for power users or for when someone reports an issue on our forums or in other forums and we need to give the player something to try. That's what these are. So you can see under here under tools advanced, there's all sorts of tools. We've got a few new ones today, and I'll just briefly go over them. Recalculate NPC counts. If you're finding that you're having trouble with the warrior counts, where you're certain you have a certain number of warriors and it's just not calculating correctly, you can try and run this tool to see if that will help. Some other new tools down here, the reset network distances cache. This can be useful to run if you have installed some new world space mods with settlements recently and they're not connecting for some reason. And then also recalculate resource networks. If you find that some of your settlements don't seem to be sharing their resources correctly, for example, say you have some power transfer settlements and they're not connecting together or not sharing their power, you could try running this to see if it will resolve it. So these are, again, power user tools, not necessarily things I expect most of you guys to use. Now, the one I want to focus a little bit more on is recalculate NPC counts, not necessarily because of the tool, but because of the warrior count issue. I know that this is something that happens to a lot of you guys. We're still actively investigating why this happens. I have a rough idea why, and I think it's another engine bug, unfortunately. And I have some ideas of how to resolve it due to a workaround that a lot of players have come up with. And I want to talk about that workaround. So if you find that your warrior counts are never getting higher, a workaround players have discovered, and a point that I'm going to use to hopefully create a permanent solution to this problem in a future patch, is that your unique NPCs, so the settlers you can recruit that show up at your settlements that have names, that have little quests or little conversations to onboard them, those NPCs will never be affected by this. So if you convert those to soldiers, if you recruit them and make them warriors, they are not impacted by this warrior count bug. And it has to do with the way engine tracks unique NPCs versus spawned NPCs. And so if you're having trouble getting through some of the story content, you don't want to skip any of our quests, and you want to make sure you always have warriors for the assaults, go try converting all of your named settlers into them, and they are not they are never hit by this bug. Now, if you're not experiencing this issue with the warrior count, don't worry about it. If you are experiencing it and you want to try this recalculate NPC counts tool, it's another option. Ultimately, what I'm hoping for by bringing you guys attention to this is that there are some of you out there who are playing with a fairly minimal load order, so mostly SS2 related things that are having this issue, and you can send me your save files, because that is how I'm going to ultimately resolve this, is looking at saves that have the issue that don't require me to install 100 mods, so I can recreate it and then hopefully come up with a fix. So I'm looking for save files like that. If you're finding your warrior counts never seem to be correct, you're not running a ton of mods, I would say sub 50 mods total, mostly SS2 related mods, please contact me on the simsettlements.com forums, and we can arrange to get your save file to me so that I can try and fix this issue permanently. All right, other than that, the rest of what I have to talk about are just a couple of patch note highlights. One is that thanks to a community member, Too Large Pepperoni, we now have done an overhaul of HQ dialogue conditioning. So a lot of our HQ department heads have a ton of dialogue related to the state of your HQ. So things like what you've built or what you need to build. And previously, when you'd speak to them, they would kind of just say things randomly. So they might say, tell you about a bathroom every single time you talk to them, even though you had already built 2 or 3 bathrooms, things like that. So this menu here, the department report, any suggestions, your thoughts, as well as the initial greetings when you talk to them, all of them have had a substantial increase in the line pool, not because we added new dialogue lines, but because Too Large went through and reconditioned a lot of them. So many of them were conditioned incorrectly or sorted in a wrong way, and so it would have felt like a lot of them were repeating themselves or saying things that didn't make any sense. It should now be a lot more accurate. Now, I'm sure there's still more work we have to do, but we've taken a first crack at it. So if you've ever been curious why the department department heads seem to not say anything sensible about what's going on in your HQ, take another crack at it. Give a talk to them, see if they seem a little more logical now, and definitely report on the forums if you find any odd moments where people are saying things that don't seem to make any sense at the moment, because we would like to get that cleaned up. We want these folks to feel like kind of your companions at HQ. They're your little set of 7 companions that you don't necessarily take out with you, that have a lot of things to say about what's going on in your game. Then the other thing worth mentioning, I think, is if you're an extended user on PC, we've got some new art assets in place for you. We've added a few new things. There's a lot of stuff that we had planned for going in the mod that we had to cut due to space, because we want to keep a consistent version on Xbox and PC. And then extended is our place to put extra things that won't fit on Xbox, and we delayed adding those into the mod until now so that we have a little more breathing room, because while doing it during that dev cycle leading up to Chapter 3's release, we were on time crunch, so it was pretty hard to find time to put in stuff that would only impact a handful of players, and now we're starting to find time for that. So for example, there's a gunner boat that appears in one of our quests that now has a custom mesh. There's this beautiful painting of a young Magnuson now that will show up at a particular moment in a quest. You will find it, don't worry, if you're playing through the main quest. Things like that, little bit of flourishes and additional art are going to make their way into some of these patches, and some of those have made it into today's patch. All right, and then lastly, as always, before we end these patch videos, we're going to give away some merch. So if you're interested in getting a chance at some SS2 merch, I'm going to give you a hashtag to include with a comment below. I read through those, and then I pick one at random to hook up with some merch. And I often forget to do this. I remembered today, though, is make sure you leave me a contact method, because it tends to be that usually when I respond to people's comments, it's not always that they notice that I responded. So I think last week, the person that technically won it never replied back to me, so I don't know that they ever actually saw it. So let me know where to contact you in addition to this hashtag. So leave me a comment below with more than just the hashtag. Leave me a way to contact you, and leave some commentary. Leave me a bug report or a funny story or something you love about SS2, whatever, just something interesting to read. And your hashtag today is Autodoc, 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 because we've just added an Autodoc to your save files with this patch. All right, guys, take care and enjoy the mods.